Hey everybody, the Super Vader 400 here, back for another review, and this time this is my review of X-Men Apocalypse. Before I even get to this review, I'm going to say off the bat is unlike the other three films I've seen this year, Captain America Civil War, TMNT Out of the Shadows, and of course Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, this film in my opinion was not good at all. Um, this film had problems. This film had a weak script. It had terrible pacing issues, and just like the previous X Men films, was inaccurate with the comic books. And finally, they did not do characters Angel, Apocalypse, and Cyclops and Jubilee justice. And I'm gonna get to all that in a minute. But the positives were this film. The positives were the story, the story, the action, and the visuals carried this film despite all those problems I just mentioned. But rest assured, this film is not good. And to tell you the truth, if it wasn't for Deadpool, this film would probably be my worst film of 2016, despite liking it. The reason I like this film is because they finally got Apocalypse in a movie. I've always wanted them to make it. I always wanted them to make an X-Men movie where the Brotherhood and X-Men team up to battle Apocalypse. We've seen this a dozen times in the cartoons, and it's been a dozen times in comics, but we have yet to see this in a film, and we got something like that in this film. This film was also a good reimagining of the X-Men franchise, and this film not only reminded me of not only reminded me a little of the original trilogy, which in my opinion is when the X-Men films were good. Anything after the Last Stand and Origins, in my opinion, really wasn't good. This not only just reminded me, but this also reminded me of the various cartoons, cartoons and comics. This was a good me imagining of the X-Men franchise. Another thing I liked about this film was that this film was set. I like how this film was set in the 80s. I'm writing several films. I'm writing several films of my own, several scripts of my own with movies set in various time periods. And I like how this is the 2010s, but you can do a film set in previous time periods like the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. So these were the positives. Going back to the negatives for this film, do not like the cast in this film. That's been a problem I've had with the X-Men, starting with First Class. Any the cast the cast in X-Men First Class, Days of Future Past, the Wolverine, and this film right here. The problem I've had with these cast members, they don't have charisma and personalities like the original cast from the original trilogy and Wolverine Origins did, and that makes the film slow. Which is, like I said, that was one of the problems I had. The film has terrible pacing issues, but the last 20 to 30 minutes of the film, where the X Men, where this lineup of X Men fights Apocalypse's four angels, and Apocalypse is worth the price of is worth the price of admission is worth the price of admission in this film. Was worth the price of admission, was worth all the wait, was worth sitting through all that terrible human drama. Like I said, these actors in this film, like I said, excluding Fassbender, McCoy, and the woman portraying Storm, and Nightcrawler and Beast. Everyone in this film was terrible. The actors portraying Mystique, Jean Grey, actors portraying Mystique, Jean Grey, acting like they didn't want to be there. Then I mentioned inaccuracies with the comics. You got Havoc, older than Scott in this film. But that's another reason. They finally got Jean Grey, Scott, Cyclops, Storm, Nightcrawler, Beast, Nightcrawler, Beast, and what you call it back into the film. But I mentioned how the Angel, they did not do him justice in this film. They didn't do Apocalypse justice in this film. I barely ever understood his purpose. I barely understood his motivation to destroy Earth in this film. And then you got what's the other guy's name? Night. Then you got Cyclops, who didn't have like a line of dialogue in this film. Jubilee. I didn't even recognize Jubilee in this movie. I didn't even recognize Jubilee in this movie. She was just some random Asian woman in this film. But well, like I said, those were the positives and negatives I had with this film. Like I said, the story, action, visuals carry this film. The last 20 minutes with X-Men versus Apocalypse's Four Horsemen was worth the price of admission. But I didn't see this film in theater, so I don't have a ticket for you. I saw this on Put Blocker. I saw a stream of this on Put Blocker, and I've watched it for the fifth time today. And when I first saw it, I was initially, first off, when I first watched the film, I was so bored I actually fell asleep. But I really wanted to watch this film, so I watched it again the second time. I was blown away, enjoyed it. Another thing I like about this film, before I get to the story, is that this film reminded me, this is a edgier, darker version of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 20th Century Fox film from 1995, another 20th Century Fox film. This film reminds me of that. Apocalypse, character design wise, reminds me of Ivan Ooze. So those were the positives and negatives. Now let's get to the story. The story is kind of hard to follow. Apocalypse. Hold on, I have it right here. I'm on Wikipedia right now. Insabanur, a powerful mutant believed to be the first of his kind, rules ancient Egypt until he is betrayed by his worshippers, who entomb him alive. His four lieutenants die, preserving him. Awakening in 1983, he believes humanity has lost its way without his presence. Aiming to destroy the world and remake it, he recruits Carol Pickpocket, Oro Monroe, who can control weather and upgrades his powers. Yeah, here is right here. And after he awakens in the modern 1980s world, he recruits Oro, aka Storm, Tom Wellington, aka Angel, Cyclops, and of course Magneto, who in this film is who's trying to live a normal life, has raised a family, but on one day he uh, uh, um on one day his family gets murdered by his family his family gets murdered by the police, according to Wikipedia right here. And then right before Magneto's about to kill some co-workers, Apocalypse approaches him and convinces him to join his Four Horsemen and kills the co-workers. And like I said, Magneto joins him. Meanwhile, the film then the film cuts to the main protagonists of this film, Professor X leading a new lineup of X-Men, Scott, who has recently just gotten into the mansion after demonstrating his optic blast powers, Hank McCoy, who in this film can turn off and on like the Incredible Hulk, and Jean Grey, who of course a telepathic and telekinetic, and Jubilee and Nightcrawler, who in the beginning is fighting a cage match with Angel, and of course Mystique, who is an X-Men in this film. Then of course later on in the film, Apocalypse wants to capture Professor X and use his mind. Um, use is wants to capture Professor X. Um, wants to capture Professor X and use his mind. I think to control the world, and then he later captures him and his team later captures kidnaps Professor X. Havoc tries to charge after them, but Cyclops does an optic blast, and Apocalypse kills Havoc, and kills Havoc, and before before and then Stryker and his team come to capture the mutants. Stryker and his team come to capture his mutants, and captures and he orders his men to take Scott, Jean, Kurt, Hank, Raven, and Peter, and with them. Moria with them. It is here we where when they escape. It is here we see Wolverine make a cameo. Wolverine, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, make a cameo, and Stryker tries to blow up the mansion. Tries to blow up the mansion, but Quicksilver Pietro, who is also in this film, rescues everyone. Rescues everyone. Rescues everyone, and then of course um rescues everyone, and then Apocalypse uses Professor X's mind to talk to the world, to tell them that their world is about to end, and Professor X uses his last bit of power, his mind control, to warn the X-Men, the people who are powerful, to protect the people who are not powerful. It is here where the X-Men find the plane, the costumes, and they take the fight to Apocalypse. Angel, they take the fight to Apocalypse. Angel fight, um, Nightcrawler fights Angel. Nightcrawler fights Angel, and Cyclops, um, 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 Beast fights Cyclops, and Cyclops fights Storm, Storm, Cyclops later intervenes. Um, Angel is accidentally killed when Nightcrawler teleports himself and everyone outside of a car, allowing the car to crash, and Angel dies. Apocalypse comes and sees Angel's dead body and tells him useless, and then Storm just does nothing but watches the final battle. Professor X battles Apocalypse inside his mind, and it briefly has the upper hand until Apocalypse gains control of Professor X. Meanwhile, Quicksilver fights Apocalypse and has the upper hand at first, but Apocalypse grabs him, and Mystique, disguised as Cyclops, tries to kill Apocalypse. Apocalypse thinks Cyclops has betrayed him, but it's Mystique. It's Mystique. Mystique turns back to normal when Apocalypse grabs Mystique by the neck and suffocates her. She turns back to normal, and she turns back to normal, and 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 then the film ends. The film ends. Um, um, the film ends. The film ends. Oh yeah, the film ends with Mystique and Professor X convincing Magneto to turn against Apocalypse, and Magneto uses his powers to imprison Apocalypse. Then then um then Beast breaks Cyclops out of the wall, which is where Apocalypse put Cyclops, and Cyclops shoots his optic blast at Apocalypse, but it still isn't enough. And Professor X tells Apocalypse that he will never win because he's alone, and encourages Jean to enlist the full extent of her Phoenix powers, of her Phoenix powers, and then finally Storm finally turns on Apocalypse and joins the battle and uses her powers of the Storm, and all that together obliterates Apocalypse, and Cyclops flees, and Cyclops flees, and the film begins with these guys becoming the new X-Men, but Apocalypse refuses Professor X's help, and there's a post-credit scene that reveals more about Wolverine. I don't remember much about the post-credit scene. I kind of didn't care, but like I said, I actually enjoyed this film despite the problems. Like I said, the last 20 minutes, that final battle was worth sitting through all the piss poor, weak acting in the film, and I will happily watch a sequel. The premise for the sequel sounds good. If they make more, that's it. That was as entertaining as this. I'll watch more X-Men films, maybe even in theaters. Like I said, before I finish, I absolutely hate the X-Men films. I like the first three; they were good for their time, and they're still entertaining to watch today. Wolverine Origins, I liked when it first came out. I don't like it now after seeing much better superhero films, and I absolutely hate it. First Class, Days of Future Past, and the Wolverine. I'll be talking more about those. I have talked about those on my channel, on my Doug A798 channel. I'll be ranting more on those later because they don't get enough hate. But that was this was my review of X-Men Apocalypse. All right, I'm done for now.